You know that moment when you realize your sister-in-law didn't fall down the stairs, she performed down the stairs? Yeah. Welcome to my November. I'm Mavis, 34, corporate attorney in Portland, Oregon, and apparently the family's designated crisis manager / amateur forensic investigator / Why are you always so dramatic? Can't you just let things be? Target. 7 days before Thanksgiving, my brother Colby called me at 2 in the morning, voice shaking like he'd just witnessed his own execution. Mavis, Clarice is in the hospital. They think I pushed her. They won't let me near her. I swear on Mom's pot roast I didn't touch her. My brother. My younger brother, actually. 32, 2 years my junior. The guy who apologizes to furniture when he bumps into it. The man who once cried watching a documentary about orphaned penguins. That guy was being investigated for domestic violence. Clarice, his wife of 6 years, had been rushed to Providence Portland Medical Center with 3 broken ribs, severe bruising, and a mild concussion. The story? She'd fallen down the attic stairs during an argument. The police version? Colby had shoved her during said argument. The evidence? Her word. Just her word. And in Oregon, that's enough for a temporary restraining order, a criminal investigation, and your entire life imploding while you sleep on your sister's IKEA couch that smells vaguely of regret and old takeout. By day 2, Colby was a ghost. Hadn't showered. Hadn't eaten. Just sat there scrolling through their wedding photos like he was mourning someone who died, but was actually very much alive and actively ruining his life from a hospital bed. The police had opened a formal investigation. He couldn't go home. His home. The $800,000 Pearl District townhouse he'd bought back in 2016 with money from his software development job, a full year before he even met Clarice. Couldn't get his clothes, couldn't get his toothbrush, couldn't get within 500 feet of his own marriage. Meanwhile, Clarice was giving Oscar-worthy performances from her private suite. Because, of course, it was a private suite. Trauma deserves comfort, her mother had announced on Facebook, along with a GoFundMe for Clarice's recovery and legal fees. The donations were already at $4,000. I wanted to vomit. Something wasn't adding up. Clarice had always been strategic. The kind of woman who accidentally mentioned her Peloton stats at dinner parties. Who posted gym selfies with captions like, "Just a quick morning workout before my acai bowl date." She worked part-time as a lifestyle blogger, which is code for post-sponsored content about organic skincare while pretending it's authentic. She wasn't clumsy, she was calculated. So on day 2, I did what any concerned sister-in-law would do. I went to visit her, with my mother as a witness, because showing up alone would have looked suspicious. We arrived at 10 in the morning, visiting hours, flowers in hand, concerned expressions perfectly calibrated. Clarice was asleep, sedated, according to the nurse. The heart monitor was doing its rhythmic beeping. Her right arm was hooked to an IV, and her left hand, the one without tubes, was resting peacefully on the blanket. And right there, on the bedside table, approximately 14 inches from her fingertips, sat her iPhone. Rose gold. No case. Screen facing up like it was inviting me to commit a felony. My mother went to the bathroom. 90-second window. I moved fast. Lifted Clarice's left hand with the gentleness of someone handling evidence, which, let's be honest, I was. Pressed her thumb to the Touch ID sensor. First try, unlocked. Security amateur mistake number 1. I didn't scroll. Didn't read. Just took 15 rapid-fire photos of everything I could see. WhatsApp conversations, recent contacts, message previews, settings page showing her email. Placed the phone back exactly where it was. When Mom returned from the bathroom, I was sitting in the visitor chair looking appropriately worried, wondering if I should have brought grapes instead of lilies. We left 10 minutes later. I'd said maybe 8 words to unconscious Clarice. Mom thought I was being respectfully quiet in the presence of trauma. I was being efficiently criminal. In the parking garage, sitting in my Subaru Outback, because yes, I'm that Portland stereotype, I opened my laptop. Accessed Apple's iCloud website, typed in Clarice's email address from the photos. Password? I tried her birthday. Second attempt. In. Thankfully, she hadn't enabled 2-factor authentication. Security amateur mistake number 2. And oh, sweet justice, she had WhatsApp web sync enabled. The messages loaded like a Netflix series I didn't ask for, but couldn't stop watching. Clarice and someone named Desmond, later identified as the manager of the Whole Foods in the Pearl District where she bought $15 acai bowls because apparently regular acai isn't spiritually aligned enough, had been planning this for months. The plan, in its full sociopathic glory, Clarice would stage a minor domestic incident, fall down the first few stairs during a fake argument with Colby, get some bruises, maybe a sprain, call an ambulance, tell police her husband pushed her during a fight about, get this, her wanting to visit her sister in Seattle for Thanksgiving. Restraining order issued. Colby removed from the house. Clarice gets sympathy, sole possession of the property, and grounds for a lawsuit. She'd already consulted a lawyer, a specific one Desmond had recommended, some guy named Brad known for aggressive representation in DV cases, which is code for, will believe anything a crying white woman tells him. The messages were detailed. Timestamps, plans, reassurances. Baby, you're so brave for doing this. Once he's out, we can finally be together. That house will be ours. Except Clarice had made one catastrophic miscalculation. Physics. She'd planned to slip on the third step, maybe hit the fourth. Controlled fall, controlled damage. But on November 21st at approximately 8:15 p.m., Clarice Hammond lost control of her own performance. Instead of a graceful tumble down 3 steps, she'd gone full ragdoll down all 14 stairs, slamming into the landing with enough force to crack 3 ribs and give herself a genuine concussion. And the kicker? The absolute chef's kiss of ironic justice? The next morning, drugged and in pain, she'd texted Desmond, "It hurt way more than we planned. I'm scared. What if they figure it out?" His response, which I screenshot with the fury of 1,000 lawyer gods, "Baby, relax. This makes it more believable. They'll believe you even more now. We'll get so much more money from him this way. You're doing amazing, sweetie." I sat in that parking garage for 40 minutes, reading, screenshotting, documenting. My brother was being investigated for a crime that never happened. Clarice had fractured her own ribs trying to frame him, and her acai bowl-slinging boyfriend was coaching her through insurance fraud from aisle 7. That's when I made the decision that would define the next 7 days of my life. I was going to respond, as her, to him, and I was going to make him confess everything. Because here's the thing about people who think they're smarter than everyone else. They get comfortable, they get sloppy, and they absolutely cannot resist the urge to congratulate themselves. I was about to give Desmond all the rope he needed. And Clarice? She was about to discover that falling downstairs wasn't her biggest mistake. Trusting her iCloud password was. Impersonating your sister-in-law via cloned messaging app while she recovers from self-inflicted injuries is exactly the kind of extracurricular activity they don't cover in law school. But here we were. Day 3, November 24th, Sunday. While normal families were meal prepping for Thanksgiving in 4 days, I was in my home office conducting what I'll diplomatically call aggressive evidence collection. Desmond's first message that morning came at 7:42 a.m. "Morning, baby. How you feeling today? Wish I could be there with you instead of pretending to care about my sister's vegan meal prep. Miss you." I waited 19 minutes before responding. Clarice wasn't a morning person. I'd learned that from 6 years of family brunches where she'd show up at noon complaining about not being a breakfast human. Detail work matters when you're committing justified fraud. My response, carefully calibrated to match her texting style, "Everything hurts. Nurse just left. Mom's coming at 10. I'm scared Des." 3 minutes later, "Scared of what, baby? You're the victim here, remember? Just stick to the story. He pushed you during the fight about Seattle. You fell, that's it. Simple." The casual coaching. That's it. Simple. Like he was teaching her a cake recipe instead of conspiracy to commit fraud. I screenshot everything with the methodical precision of someone building a federal case, which, technically, I was. Over the next hour, Desmond sent 4 more messages. Each one was a masterclass in criminal stupidity. He reminded her to look tired and scared when the social worker visits. He told her to cry a little but not too much. You don't want to seem hysterical. He actually used the word hysterical. In 2024, about a woman he was supposedly in love with. I responded with just enough vulnerability to keep him talking. What if Colby has a good lawyer? His reply made me want to throw my laptop through a window. Baby, your lawyer Brad is better. Trust me. We researched this, remember? DV cases in Oregon are like 90% he said, she said, and judges always believe the woman. Especially white women. Sorry, but it's true. You're golden. The casual racism. The legal illiteracy. It's actually closer to 63% conviction rate and heavily dependent on evidence. The sheer confidence in their plan. I was building a case file that would make prosecutors weep with joy. By afternoon, my mother called. She'd spent the morning back at the hospital with Clarice. Apparently, one visit wasn't enough for her concerned mother-in-law routine. Mom's voice had that specific tone she uses when she's trying to convince herself of something she doesn't quite believe. Mavis, I know you and Clarice have had your differences, but she's family, and she's been through something terrible. Our differences. As if differences adequately described 6 years of Clarice treating family dinners like auditions for a reality show, where she was the star and we were supporting cast. The woman had once spent an entire Christmas Eve talking about her skincare routine. For 47 minutes. Timed it. Mom, I'm sure she has, I said, stirring my third coffee of the day. Has anyone actually asked Colby for his version? Silence. The kind of silence that means, we have, but we're choosing to doubt him because the alternative is too complicated. Your brother, Mom started, then stopped. He's struggling. But Mavis, there's a process. The police are investigating. We can't just what? Believe him? He's your son. And Clarice is my daughter-in-law in the hospital with broken ribs. The logic was airtight if you ignored literally everything about human nature, criminal psychology, and the fact that Clarice's mother had already posted 3 Facebook updates about my brave daughter's journey to healing, complete with filtered hospital selfies. Clarice's eyes were closed in all of them, very artistic suffering, but her hair was definitely professionally blown out. Fascinating priorities for someone in acute pain. I spent Sunday evening not eating dinner, but reading through 2 months of messages between Clarice and Desmond. The affair had started in early September, right after Labor Day, when apparently Desmond had complimented her commitment to organic living while ringing up her $73 grocery order. Romance in aisle 5. Their early messages were standard affair content. My husband doesn't understand me. You make me feel alive again. We deserve happiness. The greatest hits of midlife crisis justification. But by mid-October, the tone shifted. That's when Desmond started sending her links. Articles about women winning DV cases. Statistics about restraining orders. A Reddit thread titled, How I Got My Ex Out of Our House Legally. October 19th, Desmond sent, You know what would solve everything? If he gave you a reason to call the cops. Just saying. October 21st, Clarice replied, What if I gave them a reason to believe me? And there it was. The inception moment. Documented, time-stamped, preserved forever in cloud storage. By day 4, November 25th, Monday, I had graduated to full conversational engagement with Desmond. He'd started getting nervous. Baby, why aren't you calling me? Are you okay? You're texting different. I'd been too formal. Clarice used excessive punctuation and emoji. I'd been writing like someone with a legal education and autocorrect. Rookie mistake. Adjusted strategy. Sorry, babe, everything hurts, can't type much. Nurse says ribs take 6 weeks to heal, WTF. Better. He relaxed immediately. 6 weeks is nothing, baby. By New Year's, we'll be together. Brad says the restraining order extension is basically guaranteed. Colby won't even be able to come to the property line. We can literally watch him pack his stuff from the window. The cruelty was so casual, it was almost impressive. This man sold overpriced produce for a living and thought he'd orchestrated the perfect crime. The confidence of mediocre men truly knows no bounds. Day 5. Tuesday. Desmond sent a voice memo at 6 a.m. I'd been awake for an hour, already on my second espresso, laptop open, recording software ready. pressed play. His voice was exactly what you'd expect. Slightly nasal, overly sincere, the audio equivalent of a man who describes himself as spiritual but not religious. "Hey baby, I know you're probably sleeping, but I just wanted to say I'm so proud of you. You're being so strong through this. I know it hurt more than we planned, but honestly, that just makes it more believable. The broken ribs, the hospital stay, all of it. No one's going to question anything now. You're literally the perfect victim." That sounded bad. You know what I mean. I love you. We're going to get through this and then it's just us. Finally. I played it 3 times. Transcribed it word for word. Saved it in 14 different locations, including a USB drive I immediately locked in my office safe. He'd said it. More than we planned. Perfect victim. Past tense planning. Future tense payoff. Colby was still sleeping on my couch, still looking like death, still convinced his life was over. He'd lost 6 pounds in 7 days. Hadn't shaved except when I literally threw clean clothes at him and forced him into the bathroom. His lawyer, a public defender named Rita, who looked 12 but argued like she'd been doing this for decades, had told him the chances of the charges being dropped without significant evidence were minimal at best. Meanwhile, Clarice's GoFundMe had hit $7,200. Her mother was planning a recovery celebration for when she got discharged. The local news had picked up the story. Portland woman hospitalized after alleged domestic dispute. They'd used Clarice's engagement photo, the one where she looked luminous and innocent, taken at some vineyard in Willamette Valley. Colby looked like a background character in his own engagement. I had 7 days of messages, 4 voice memos, bank transfer receipts showing Clarice had moved $43,000 from their joint account to a private account Colby didn't know existed. An account opened on September 12th with Desmond Whitmore listed as the secondary holder. Google search history, because yes, iCloud backs up Safari searches, showing queries for how to make a fall look real and Oregon restraining order average duration, and my personal favorite, can husband sue wife for lying about DV? The irony of that last search was so thick you could spread it on toast. Day 6. Wednesday, November 27th. The social worker assigned to the case, a woman named Patricia who wore exclusively pantsuits and spoke in therapy voice, scheduled a family mediation meeting at the hospital for Thursday afternoon. My suggestion, delivered with the earnest tone of someone who definitely wasn't planning to detonate a truth bomb. It might help everyone process and heal, I'd told her on the phone. Family communication is so important. Patricia had loved it. That's very mature of you, Mavis. Many families resist mediation in DV situations. Well, I'd said, I just want what's best for everyone involved. What's best for everyone was about to include a 51-page evidence packet, 3 ring binders with color-coded tabs, and the most satisfying family meeting since someone invented the intervention. Day 7 began with Desmond making the kind of mistake that defense attorneys have nightmares about. He got comfortable. Thursday morning, November 28th, Thanksgiving Day, ironically, 8:33 a.m. I was organizing my evidence binders. Yes, plural, I'm that person. When his message came through. Happy Thanksgiving, baby. Wish we could celebrate together. Once this is over and the house is sold, we should move somewhere warm. Maybe Arizona? I hate Portland rain. We could get a place in Scottsdale. Fresh start. New lives. No one knowing our business. The casual assumption that they'd sell Colby's house, the house he'd bought in 2016 with money from his software development job, a full year before he even met Clarice, was breathtaking. The audacity required to not just steal someone's life but redecorate it for yourself deserves some kind of award. Probably not a legal award, but still. I responded as Clarice, keeping it vague. That sounds nice. Arizona is warm. His reply was instant. We deserve this, baby. After everything you've been through, everything we've been through planning this. You were so brave doing what you did. I know falling hurt more than we wanted, but now the payout will be even better. Your lawyer says with your injuries you could sue for like $200K easy, maybe more. Pain and suffering, medical costs, emotional trauma, all of it. There it was. The full confession, the acknowledgement of planning, the discussion of financial motive, The use of we in planning a fraudulent injury. I screenshot it, added it to the folder labeled Smoking Gun Evidence, and allowed myself exactly 30 seconds of satisfaction before getting back to work. The mediation meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. Patricia, the social worker, had assembled quite the guest list. Both sets of parents, Clarice, and any family members who wished to attend and support. I'd RSVP'd immediately. Colby wasn't invited. Restraining order meant he couldn't be within 500 feet of Clarice, which meant he couldn't attend his own mediation. The irony was so thick, it had its own zip code. I spent the morning preparing, not just organizing evidence. Any first-year law student could do that, but strategizing delivery, timing, impact. This wasn't just about proving Clarice lied. This was about making sure everyone in that room understood exactly how premeditated, how calculated, how fundamentally sociopathic this whole scheme had been. Printed everything in triplicate, color-coded tabs, chronological organization. I even created a table of contents. If you're going to destroy someone's fraudulent narrative, you might as well do it with proper formatting. At 1:45 p.m., I loaded everything into my leather messenger bag, the one I use for court appearances, because yes, I was treating this like a trial, and drove to Providence Portland Medical Center. Again. I'd been there so many times in the past week the parking attendant recognized my car. Clarice had been moved to a regular room on day 8, finally stable enough to leave intensive observation. Still private. Her insurance was apparently excellent, or her parents were paying, or the GoFundMe was being creatively allocated. But less intensive care. More recovery suite. Room 417. I memorized it. Arrived at 1:58. Patricia was already there, standing outside Clarice's room with a canvas tote bag that probably said something about mindfulness. She smiled when she saw me. That social worker smile that's half genuine warmth and half professional assessment. Mavis, thank you so much for coming. I really think this dialogue will help everyone process. Absolutely, I said, returning her smile with the one I use for opposing counsel. Communication is so important. We entered together. The room was already crowded. Clarice was sitting up in bed, hair freshly washed. Someone had brought her dry shampoo, apparently, wearing a soft pink robe that screamed wounded angel. Her mother sat to her right, holding her hand. Her father stood by the window, arms crossed, looking uncomfortable. My parents were on the opposite side. Mom in the visitor chair looking worried. Dad standing behind her doing his retired Marine Corps face that means he's withholding judgment, but barely. Clarice looked at me and actually smiled. A small, grateful smile, like I was there to support her. The delusion was almost impressive. Patricia began with her therapist voice. Thank you all for being here. I know this is difficult. The purpose of today's gathering is to facilitate open communication, allow for healing dialogue, and help the family unit begin to process this traumatic event together. Family unit. As if we were a modular furniture set from IKEA. She continued. I want to start by acknowledging Clarice's courage in... Actually, I interrupted, keeping my tone pleasant. Before we continue, I think there are some things everyone should see. The room went quiet. Patricia looked confused. Mom looked nervous. Clarice's smile faltered. I reached into my messenger bag and pulled out the first binder. Set it on the rolling tray table near Clarice's bed with the gentle precision of someone delivering a subpoena. These are text messages between Clarice and Desmond Whitmore, manager of the Whole Foods in the Pearl District, dated from September 8th through this morning. I've organized them chronologically with timestamps. Clarice's face went from pink to white so fast I could have used her as a color palette demonstration. Mavis, what are you... Her mother started. Page 3. I continued, flipping the binder open. September 29th. Clarice writes, I wish I could just start over, without him. Desmond responds, maybe you can. People do it all the time. This establishes the beginning of conspiracy discussions. Patricia reached for the binder. I handed it to her. She started reading, and I watched her professional composure crack like ice in springtime. Page 17. October 19th. Desmond sends Clarice a Reddit thread about restraining orders. October 21st, Clarice responds, and I'm reading verbatim here. What if I gave them a reason to believe me? That's premeditation. My father leaned forward. My mother had her hand over her mouth. Clarice's father was staring at his daughter like he'd never seen her before. Mavis, I can explain. Clarice tried, but her voice was weak, unconvincing. Page 32, I continued, pulling out a second binder. November 15th, 6 days before the incident. Clarice and Desmond discuss specific details of how she'll stage a fall. She mentions the first few stairs and worries about making it look real. He tells her to commit to it, and that minor bruising will be enough. I placed the second binder on the table, pulled out a third. This binder contains bank statements showing that on November 10th, Clarice transferred $43,000 from the joint account she shares with Colby into a private account at a different bank. Account opened September 12th. Desmond Whitmore is listed as the secondary account holder. Clarice's mother made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. And this, I said, pulling out my phone, is a voice memo Desmond sent to Clarice on November 26th. Would you like me to play it? Or would you prefer to read the transcript I've provided on page 47 of Binder 1? Silence. The kind of silence that happens when everyone in a room simultaneously realizes they've been attending the wrong play. Patricia spoke first, her therapy voice completely gone, replaced by something sharp and official. Ms. Hammond, I need to ask you directly. Did you stage the incident on November 21st? Clarice opened her mouth, closed it, looked at her mother, who was now staring at the binder like it was written in a foreign language she was desperately trying to translate. The messages are, Mavis broke into my phone. That's illegal. This is an invasion of privacy. She can't. You're right, I said calmly. I accessed your iCloud account without authorization. That's potentially a civil violation. However, you're currently under investigation for filing a false police report, conspiracy to commit fraud, and potentially perjury if you've given any sworn statements. So we can compare misdemeanors if you'd like, but I don't think that math works in your favor. Her father finally spoke. Clarice, is any of this true? She tried to cry. Actual tears wouldn't come. Stress, medication, or the dawning realization that tears wouldn't fix this? I couldn't tell, but the effect was jarring. She looked like an actress who'd forgotten her lines. Dad, it's not what it looks like. Desmond and I were just talking. We weren't serious. I did fall. I really fell. It hurt. I'm injured. Look at me. You are injured, I agreed, because you tried to throw yourself down 3 stairs and miscalculated. Basic physics. You weigh approximately 130 pounds. The stairs are oak with no carpet runner. You were wearing socks. I checked the police report. They noted your clothing. And you lost control. The injury is real. The cause is fraud. I pulled out the final document, placed it in front of Patricia. This is a formal request for the restraining order against Colby Hammond to be immediately suspended pending investigation of new evidence. I'm also filing a complaint with the Portland Police Bureau regarding false reporting. And this, I handed her another paper, is a cease and desist to Clarice Hammond regarding the GoFundMe account, which is currently collecting money under false pretenses. Patricia took the documents with shaking hands. She looked at Clarice, then at me, then back at Clarice. Ms. Hammond, I'm required by law to report suspected fraud in cases involving domestic violence allegations. Based on what I'm seeing here, I need to contact the police immediately. Clarice's mother stood up so fast her chair squeaked against the floor. This is insane. My daughter is lying in a hospital bed. She's the victim here. Mavis, how could you do this to family? I turned to her with the flattest expression I could manage. Your daughter tried to send my brother to jail for a crime he didn't commit, so she could steal his house and run away with her boyfriend from the organic produce section. I'm not doing this to family. I'm doing this for family. Patricia had her phone out, already dialing. Clarice was crying now, real tears finally. But they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of someone watching their entire plan collapse in real time. My mother looked at me. Mavis, did you really access her phone without permission? Technically, I used her own biometrics, So it's more like assisted access. That's not better. Mom, she was going to put Colby in jail. My father, who hadn't spoken until now, cleared his throat. When do we get to tell Colby he's not a criminal? That's when I allowed myself to smile. Watching someone's entire life plan implode in real time is surprisingly similar to watching a controlled demolition. There's a moment of suspension where everything looks fine, and then gravity remembers how physics works. Patricia made 3 phone calls in rapid succession, all from Clarice's hospital room while the rest of us existed in this bizarre, frozen tableau. First call, her supervisor at Child and Family Services. Second call, the Portland Police Bureau detective assigned to Colby's case. Third call, the hospital's legal department. Because apparently, when your patient is potentially a fraud case, risk management needs to know. Clarice kept trying to talk, but the words coming out were the verbal equivalent of throwing spaghetti at a wall to see what sticks. This is a misunderstanding. Desmond is just a friend. I did fall. I really did fall. Mavis is trying to protect her brother by making me look bad. Each sentence contradicted the previous one. It was almost performance art. Her mother had moved from denial to bargaining in record time. Surely there's an explanation. Maybe the messages are out of context. Mavis, you're a lawyer. You know how things can be misinterpreted. Mrs. Hammond, I said, keeping my voice level, your daughter wrote, and I quote, "What if I gave them a reason to believe me?" That's not really open to interpretation. That's basically a confession with a question mark. Clarice's father hadn't said anything since asking if it was true. He was still standing by the window, but now he was looking at his daughter, the way you'd look at a stranger wearing your kid's face. The disappointment was so thick you could serve it at Thanksgiving dinner, which ironically was supposed to be happening in about 4 hours. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived 90 minutes later, impressive response time for a holiday afternoon. The detective was maybe 50, with gray-streaked hair in a practical ponytail and the expression of someone who'd seen everything twice and wasn't impressed either time. She introduced herself, looked at the binders I'd arranged on the tray table and said, "Who prepared these?" "I did," I said. "I'm Mavis Hammond, Colby Hammond's sister, corporate attorney, not criminal, but I understand evidence organization. How did you obtain these messages?" Here we go. I accessed Clarice's iCloud account using her Apple ID, which I obtained by photographing her phone settings while she was sedated in this hospital. I then used the password I correctly guessed, her birthday, to log in remotely and sync her WhatsApp messages. Dead silence. Even Clarice stopped mid-sob to stare at me. Detective Reeves blinked exactly once. That's illegal. I'm aware. I'm also aware that the messages contain evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, filing a false police report, and potentially extortion. I made a calculated risk assessment that proving my brother's innocence was worth the legal exposure. She almost smiled. Almost. You're either very brave or very stupid. I've been called worse things by better people. The detective spent the next 20 minutes reading through the binders while Patricia provided administrative commentary, and Clarice's parents looked like they were attending a funeral for their illusions about their daughter. My parents stayed quiet, but Dad kept making this face. The one that means he's mentally composing a speech about honor and integrity that he'll deliver later, probably in the car. Detective Reeves finally looked up from the binders. "Ms. Hammond, Clarice Hammond, I need you to answer some questions. You have the right to remain silent, and I'd actually recommend you exercise that right and contact an attorney. But I'm required to inform you that based on this evidence, we're opening an investigation into filing a false report and conspiracy to commit fraud." Clarice found her voice, or at least a shaky version of it. "But I'm injured. I have broken ribs. The injury is real." "The injury is real," the detective agreed. "The cause is in question. According to these messages, you planned to stage a fall. You then fell, harder than intended. That doesn't make you a victim of domestic violence. That makes you a victim of bad planning. I shouldn't have enjoyed that as much as I did." The detective turned to me. "I'm going to need you to come to the station and give a formal statement. And Ms. Hammond, Mavis, you should probably bring your own attorney because the DA is going to have questions about your methods." "Understood. But off the record?" Detective Reeves lowered her voice slightly. "I've been working DV cases for 19 years. Real victims are terrified, not texting their boyfriends about property division. I'll be recommending the restraining order against your brother be dissolved immediately. My mother actually gasped with relief. Dad's face did something complicated that might have been pride mixed with exasperation. The emotional range of a man who raised a daughter who commits felonies for justice. Clarice's mother finally broke. Clarice Marie Hammond, what have you done? The middle name deployment. The universal sign of parental devastation. Mom, Clarice tried. But what was there to say? Sorry I tried to frame my husband and steal his house to fund my affair with a man who manages organic kale? Her father spoke for the first time in 30 minutes. We're leaving. When you're discharged, you'll need to find somewhere else to stay. Not our house. Brutal. Efficient. Very Portland passive-aggressive wrapped in Midwestern directness. They left. Just walked out. Patricia looked uncomfortable. The detective looked unsurprised. And Clarice looked like someone who'd just realized actions have consequences, and consequences don't care about your aesthetic. By 6 p.m., I was at the police station giving my statement to Detective Reeves and a very tired-looking assistant district attorney named Marcus Wright, who kept rubbing his temples like this case was giving him a migraine. Fair. Let me get this straight, Marcus said, reviewing his notes. You committed unauthorized access to a computer system, which is a Class C felony in Oregon, to prove your brother didn't commit a crime he was accused of, and in the process, uncovered evidence of a conspiracy to frame him. That's accurate. And you documented everything with the organizational skills of a prosecutor. I'm thorough. You committed a felony. I'm aware. Are you planning to charge me? He looked at Detective Reeves. She shrugged. He looked back at me. The district attorney is going to make that call. But between us, this is a prosecutorial nightmare. The evidence is problematic for formal charges against your sister-in-law, but it gives us investigative direction. And frankly, charging you would be terrible optics. Sister saves innocent brother from false accusation. The press would have a field day. So Colby's in the clear? The restraining order will be lifted tomorrow morning. The investigation into domestic violence allegations will be closed. As for your sister-in-law, we're opening a separate investigation into her actions. And her boyfriend. Desmond? Right. Desmond from Whole Foods. Marcus said it like he was reading from a rejected screenplay. We'll be having a conversation with him too. Desmond. I'd almost forgotten about Desmond in the chaos of the hospital room confrontation. The detective hadn't forgotten, though. We picked up Mr. Whitmore 2 hours ago, Detective Reeves said, checking her phone. He's currently in interview room 2 claiming he doesn't know anything about planning a fake fall. Unfortunately for him, we have his voice memo where he literally congratulates Clarice on executing the plan. The irony of a man being caught by his own voice while selling organic vegetables wasn't lost on me. By Friday morning, November 29th, Colby was legally allowed to exist within 500 feet of his own life again. The restraining order was dissolved. The domestic violence investigation was closed with a note that evidence suggests no crime occurred as initially reported. Legal speak for, his wife is a liar, but we're being diplomatic. I drove to my apartment at 7 a.m. to tell him. He was awake, sitting on my couch in the same position he'd been in for 8 days, looking like a man who'd forgotten what hope felt like. Colby. He looked up, eyes red, face unshaven, wearing a t-shirt from the pile of clean clothes I'd thrown at him days ago. At least he'd changed once. It's over. The restraining order is gone. Clarice is under investigation. You're clear. He stared at me like I'd spoken in Mandarin. What? I sat down next to him and explained everything. The phone access, the messages, the mediation room confrontation, the detective, the evidence, all of it. His face went through approximately 17 different emotions in the span of 5 minutes. When I got to the part about the $43,000, he actually stood up. She stole $43,000? His voice cracked. I thought we were saving that for... He stopped, sat back down heavily. Sorry, continue. I finished the story. When I was done, he was crying. Not sad crying, relief crying. The kind of crying that happens when you've been holding your breath for a week and finally remember how oxygen works. Mavis, how did you, why did you, because you're my brother, and you once drove 4 hours to bring me soup when I had the flu in college. Family math is simple. He laughed through tears. You committed crimes for me. Don't get too excited. I might still get charged. I'll hire you the best lawyer. I am the best lawyer. Then I'll hire you the second best lawyer. By Tuesday, December 3rd, the story had made local news. Woman arrested for filing false domestic violence report. Clarice's engagement photo was replaced with a mugshot. The GoFundMe was shut down, funds frozen, and within 6 weeks all $7,200 were refunded to donors. Apparently fraud doesn't entitle you to charity either. Desmond was also arrested. Conspiracy charges. The Whole Foods corporate office released a statement about not reflecting our values and terminated effective immediately. I wondered if they'd keep his employee discount active. Probably not. Colby went home, to his home, on Wednesday. I helped him pack up the few things Clarice hadn't already taken or destroyed. The house felt different, emptier. Not because of missing furniture, but because of missing delusions. What happens now? He asked, standing in the kitchen where he'd apparently had 1,000 breakfasts with a woman who was planning to destroy him. Now? You file for divorce. You change the locks. You maybe get a good therapist. And you definitely update your Apple ID password. He smiled. First real smile I'd seen in 9 days. Thank you, Mavis. Seriously. I don't know how to. You don't have to. That's what sisters are for. Well, that and committing light felonies. 3 months later, I'm sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Portland. Not Starbucks because I have standards, but one of those aggressively local places where the barista has opinions about your milk choices. And I'm reviewing the final paperwork from what my family now refers to as the incident. Clarice pled guilty to filing a false report in exchange for dropping the fraud charges. 2 years probation, 300 hours community service, and a permanent record that'll make future background checks very interesting. Her lawyer, a public defender named Sandra Martinez, not the aggressive DV specialist, Brad, that Desmond had recommended but never got around to hiring, managed to keep her out of jail by arguing she'd suffered enough through public humiliation and broken ribs. The judge wasn't impressed but accepted the plea. Desmond got 18 months probation and a ban from contacting Clarice. Last I heard, he moved to Sacramento and works at a Trader Joe's now. Different organic grocery store, same misplaced confidence. Some people never learn. The divorce was finalized in February. Colby kept the house, obviously. Clarice got exactly nothing except her personal belongings and the legal bills. The $43,000 she'd transferred? Judge ordered it returned with interest. Turns out, fraud doesn't entitle you to marital assets. Revolutionary concept. As for me, the district attorney decided not to charge me with unauthorized computer access after my attorney. Yes, I hired the second best lawyer, a woman named Catherine who argued motions like she was personally offended by injustice, presented a compelling case. Essentially, prosecuting me would be terrible optics. Sister saves innocent brother from false accusation, and the evidence had led to legitimate criminal charges against actual bad actors. The DA called it not worth the PR nightmare and declined to prosecute. I didn't frame that quote, but I definitely tell the story at dinner parties. My mother still brings it up at family gatherings, though. Mavis, honey, have you considered solving problems through legal channels next time? And I always respond the same way. Mom, I used every legal channel available. Then I used some illegal ones. Results matter. Dad just laughs. He's secretly proud. Won't admit it directly. But he introduces me at his veteran meetups as my daughter, the one who hacked her sister-in-law to save her brother. I haven't corrected him that it wasn't hacking. It was unauthorized access with correctly guessed credentials. Let him have his moment. Colby's doing better. Therapy helped. He's dating again. Carefully, with the caution of someone who's learned that people can smile at you while planning your destruction. He changed all his passwords, enabled two-factor authentication on everything, and now treats his phone like it contains nuclear launch codes. Trauma has its learning curves. He sold the house in March. Too many bad memories. Bought a condo in the Alphabet District. Smaller, but his. untainted by betrayal and fake falls. We had a housewarming party where he made a toast thanking me for believing in his innocence and committing light felonies to prove it. Everyone laughed. My mother didn't. The local news moved on to other stories within a week. That's the thing about scandals. They're only interesting until the next one arrives. Clarice's mugshot circulated on social media for a while, became a minor meme in true crime communities, then faded into the digital archives where embarrassing things live forever, but nobody actively looks. I learned some things, though. About family, about justice, about the gap between what's legal and what's right. That gap exists, it's real, and sometimes you have to decide which side you're standing on. Legal doesn't always mean just. Following proper channels doesn't always lead to truth. Sometimes the system fails, and you have to become your own system. Is that dangerous thinking? Probably. Do I regret it? Not even a little. People ask me, other attorneys, friends, the woman who does my taxes, if I'd do it again. The unauthorized access, the evidence gathering, the risk of prosecution, and I always say yes, without hesitation, because Colby would have been convicted based on nothing but Clarice's performance and society's willingness to believe a crying woman over a confused man. He would have lost his home, his reputation, possibly his freedom, all because someone decided his life was less important than her convenience. So yes, I'd commit the same crimes again. I'd access the same iCloud account. I'd compile the same evidence. I'd walk into that hospital room with the same binders and the same righteous fury. Every single time. The coffee shop barista calls my name. Oat milk latte, extra hot, because I'm predictable in my caffeination habits if nothing else. I take the cup, leave a generous tip. Service industry workers deserve better than they get, and walk out into a Portland afternoon that's somehow not raining. Small miracles. My phone buzzes. Text from Colby. Dinner Sunday? I'm making Mom's pot roast. You know, the one with actual beef, not the tofu experiment from last year. I respond, only if you promise not to date anyone who shops at Whole Foods. 3 dots appear. Then, deal. Also changing my iCloud password again just in case. Smart man. He's learning. I pocket my phone and head back to my office. I've got 3 client meetings this afternoon, a deposition tomorrow, and a reputation as the lawyer who will break rules if the cause is righteous enough. That reputation cuts both ways. Some potential clients love it, some are terrified of it, but it's honest. Because here's what I've learned in 34 years of life. Sometimes the rules are wrong. Sometimes the system fails. Sometimes justice requires a little creativity and a lot of nerve. And sometimes, when your family needs you, you don't ask permission. You just act, even if it means committing felonies with excellent documentation.